Hi all. This is the second in a three-part uh, brief tutorial on using Excel. In the first video, I'll cover some basic introductory information about Excel. This tutorial is designed to cover a general introduction to the use of formulas in Excel, including basic formulas, formula structures, copying formulas, and relative and absolute reference. And then in the third introductory video, I'll cover some more formulas that are more designed for statistical use. So let's get started. What I've set up here are two things. On the right, I have a document that I've designed that includes some basic formulas with information about those. I'll post those with this video so you can take a look at those and kind of get familiar with basic mathematical formulas in Excel. On the left, I have a small budget that I made out just because when I think of Excel, I think of using Excel for budgets mostly. And so I just have some numbers that I threw up here. They don't really mean anything, but I'm just going to use these to show you some basic issues with formulas. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing is when I click on a cell, I want to see my formula bar at the top, and if you don't see the formula bar, click View and then click Formula Bar and it'll show up. If you're working on something and it's in your way, you can eliminate that from View while it's not needed. But when I click on a cell, I will go up to the formula bar and I'll type in a formula. In this case, what I want to do first is I want to add the salaries of the manager for January, February, and March in my budget. So there's two ways of adding, and if we look over here on the right side to go through addition, if I want to add two cells, I can just say something like equals A1 plus B1, and that'll work fine. I could say equals A1 plus B1 plus C1, or I can use the sum function equals the sum, open parentheses, and in here I want to put I can list the actual cells I want to add. It could be A1, B1, it could be D22, whatever. Close parentheses. So I can actually individually list the cells I want to reference in my formula, as I've done here. A1, D1, G1, J1 as well. Or I can actually give a range. If I want Excel to sum a whole row or a whole column, I can simply put the cell at the beginning and the cell at the end. Remember, every cell has a letter and a number. So in this case, I would be adding cells A1 through A25 by use of this colon. Notice a couple things. We always start with equal sign. If we have some kind of function that we're using, it's going to be in all caps, such as in this case sum. And then I have a parentheses closed, open and closed. I have to have actually the same number of open and closed parentheses in my formula. So in this case, what I'm going to do, the simplest way for me is just to say equals sum, capital SUM, open parentheses. I want to add cells B2 through D2. So I'll say B2 colon D2 close parentheses, and that gives me 2700. Now, I could actually go through and add up each one of these sets of numbers in the same way, but Excel is very user-friendly in that we can just simply copy a formula down. So notice I drag my cursor over the box, I get a dark solid black cross when I hit the bottom right hand corner, and I click my mouse and drag that down, and it actually drags the same formula down. Now, so here what we have is an example of how Excel uses relative reference. What I basically have in this cell, E2, is a formula that adds up the three cells that are to the left of it, right? I've added D2, C2, and B2. And now when I drag the cursor down, not only did I tell Excel to copy the formula, but I said, don't put, in this cell, E3, don't put the addition of B2, C2, and D2. Rather, drag those cells down one space as well And now I want to copy B3, C3, and D3 into E3. And so that's relative reference. So whenever we copy a formula from one cell to the other, I want you to remember that you're actually telling Excel, I've gone down one space, I want you to go down one space on each of the numbers in my formula. It would be the same if we went from, say, a column to the next column. It would do the exact same thing using relative reference. So now I have this interesting little subtotal for the first quarter of the year for my budget for each of my staff that work at my outpatient clinic. So that's their salary. And I don't even know if these salaries are even close to being accurate. Again, I just threw some numbers out. But now when I figure out a budget, I have to also figure out benefits, and there are a lot of ways of doing that. We can actually have the exact number that represents workers' comp, unemployment insurance, vacation, maybe an allowance for overtime, education days, sick days, pay time off, however. But a simple version is just to simply have a number where we say, well, we're going to multiply all salaries by 25% to get our benefits. Actually, I think the cost of benefits have gone up. I'm going to go ahead and change that to 30%. So whatever we pay our employees, if the CFO alerts us to this, that you can simply multiply benefits by salaries by 0.30 to get benefits, we can certainly do that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a multiplication formula. And if you see on my chart, and by the way, I've skipped subtraction. Subtraction follows the exact same process as addition, except of course we use a minus sign. When we get to multiplication, it's really interesting. SPSS does not use a lowercase x for multiplication because it could be mistaken as being a letter. So interesting. One of the interesting things about Excel is that we use an asterisk like this for multiplication. So in this formula, this is equal to A1 times B1. We could also use the product function where we say equals product. Again, those all capitals. And we can have open parentheses, close parentheses with two numbers separated by a column, a comma. Or we can have a range. In this case, this would be equal to the product of multiplying A1 times B1 times C1. And so you'll notice on my formula chart I have the formula structure and I have notes about it on the right to kind of help you out in terms of how those get used. So okay, so now we're going to do multiplication. So what I want to do is I actually want to multiply cell E2, my total in salaries from my manager, times my 30%. So there's a couple of ways I can do this. And the most logical way would be to put equals. And because it's not a string of numbers, I don't really need to go to the trouble of writing out product. So I'll simply say equals E2 times, remember asterisk, cell B9. And also notice this, how Excel does a great job of highlighting the cells you're about to use in your formula. I always recommend you check that before you press the return key to make sure that those are the numbers you really want to use. Now watch what happens with this. We just said we can copy our numbers down. Watch what happens if I copy this formula down. It's a 0. How did that happen? What happened was, in this formula, I said multiply this cell by this one down here, and now I'm going down one cell, so Excel did too. It multiplied cell E3, it went down one there, and it also went down one here from B9 to B10. So that's going to be a problem because I won't be able to just simply copy this formula if I have to always point the formula to this one particular cell. So this is how we're going to get around it, by using what's known as absolute reference. So the way we do that is, let's go back and look at our formula. we still want to always be going down one row or one cell for our salary. We just don't want to go down one cell for our factor down here. And this could be a factor used for anything, but so it's the same process. But so anyway, all I'm going to do is something really interesting. Is I'm going to put a $sign in front of the B and a $sign in front of the 9. No, it won't change. Won't change my 8100. Still have that number. But what it does now, it's telling Excel when I copy this, look how it gave me a number. And look at the number that it held up. It held up the B9. So what I did was, when I put in the $sign and copied it down, I told Excel, yes, I want you to go down one cell, use relative reference for this first number, go from E2 to E3, but I want you to always return to the cell B9 in my formula. And so now I can continue and copy that for the rest. Now to get a total, I can simply put in equals, that would be E2 plus F2. And so I have the total of salaries and benefits for the first quarter for each of the staff. The process is the same for dividing as it is for multiplying, except that we actually use the diagonal division sign. So this formula would be equals A1 divided by B1, or we can actually put equals the product in parentheses A1 over B1. Notice the other formulas I have down here, and just to kind of show you and think through math of how complicated things can be. I might have a formula something like this, equals the product of A1 times the sum of B1 and the product of A1 C1. And so what I want you to do is think about that. You can do whatever you can do in math, you can do in Excel if you use the right formula. But the point here is, notice that I have a total of 4 open parentheses and 4 closed parentheses. And if I don't do that, I will get an error message from Excel that there's something wrong with my formula. I have average down here, but I'll be covering average in the third video of this series. So we've covered some basic mathematical formulas. I hope this has been helpful. I will post both of these documents with this video so that you can review them. And just let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.